So now we're ready to plot the first table that shows revenues by store and region. So while we have a relational database, therefore we don't have really a dimension, these are potentially two attributes from a location dimension. So we're just gonna drag and drop in the columns for now all the attributes that we believe are relevant. So region ID and region name, and store ID and store zip code. Now you can see that actually region ID is pretty much equivalent to region name, at least for now. So we can actually drop region ID because region name is probably more meaningful to the audience. And same thing for region ID and store zip code. So it's probably more meaningful to identify a store by the zip code, assuming there is just one store in each zip code, and by the store ID. So I end up with just region name and store zip code. Now we need to add the measure to this table, that is the revenues for each store, identified by zip code in this case, and the region. And so you can see that we do have a product price and a quantity for each transaction. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new measure, and we're gonna do it by adding a new calculated field. So we're gonna call this calculated field the revenues. And in revenues, what we're gonna do is that we're gonna take, here you see that the autocomplete, so just press tab. We're gonna use the product price times quantity of products that are sold in each transaction. So that's an attribute of the includes table. We're gonna click on OK. So now you see that under here you have a new measure that's called revenues. So you can drag and drop revenues here, and you're gonna see something like this. Now that we have all the revenues, we can calculate those revenues in percent. So we can add revenues to marks, and here we can click on the drop down menu, select quick table calculation, and select percent of total. Now the percent of total has to go in the table, so we add it to the text. Now that we added it to the text, we can take care of the cosmetics. So the first thing we could do is we could flip the table, make it vertical. Then we can take care of the formatting. So for instance, when it comes to revenues, that's probably a dollar amount. So we can fix the format. Instead of numbers, we can pick currency custom. None of them seems to really need decimal points, so we can set the decimals to 0. That's also gonna make it a lot more readable. Same thing for the percent. So we do have a percent that has decimal points, and that makes it harder to read. So what we could do is we could go here under percentage, decimal places. We can pick just one decimal, that's enough, or maybe even 0. We can also calculate some totals. So if we go to analytics, we can select totals and then calculate the grand total. It's going to be the for 100%, and then the total amount of revenues. And we can also calculate subtotals. So subtotals for each region if we wished. Other things that could be important is to give it a meaningful title. So for instance, revenues by store and region. We could also perhaps add a caption to this table. We would do it by going on worksheet and then show caption. So here we can edit the caption. Actually, Tableau gives us one already. Sum of the revenues and percent of total revenues broken down by region name and store zip. And if we want to display the two columns next to each other, we could do so now we see one column for the percentages and one for the total revenues. You can go to data and then call region name, actually region, and do the same for all the variables that we want to rename.